Hello, this is going to be a DIY for installing the F1 motor, which I have here. This one has been provided by Judy Giovanni. And you can see it has the heat sinks installed. So you're going to need the motor, some grease, 50 amp fuse, 70 amp relay. We'll proceed by removing this back panel. You could remove this panel if you would like, however I'm only going to remove this rear panel, and that'll be step one. Quick note, to remove that panel you'll need a 3mm hex bit, so just thought I'd add that in. Okay, so the next step is to unplug the connector here from the actual motor connector, the female connector. So to do that, you're gonna have to reach in here. Now this is a coupe. It's way easier on a Spider because you actually have more space up here. So what you'll do is you'll just pry this back, and you have to do it by feel really, because you can't see what you're doing. So you have to pull back on this tab and pull the connector back, and it comes right off. So once you do that, we proceed by removing the Torx screws. Make sure you don't remove the hex ones because they will dehermetize the actual pump. So remove the Torx screws, and I believe these are 25 millimeter Torx. So remove them diagonal. And at the same time, you'll have to place something under here, maybe like a piece of cardboard, because you're gonna have parts that are gonna come out. There's a metal bracket, gasket, and also a small piece that goes into the motor flange, and I'll show you that right now. Okay, so I removed the Torx screws here. So you're gonna need a T20. I believe it's T20 or T25. Can't be sure. So I remove them, and the next step is to pull back on this part here on the pump, and what we should see is a black gasket fall off. It's a metal gasket, so that's the next part here. And as you can see, I also put this piece of cardboard there to prevent anything from falling down, so I could catch anything there quickly. So there we have it. So I removed the old mortar. So this is they're shorter and wider, a little fatter. No backing plate came off. I checked everywhere. Normally there's a metal gasket plate here. There wasn't one, right? So it normally fits right here in that area. Fits perfectly flush. So yeah, first time I see that happening. Now here is that's the new motor that I have. I had the heat sinks installed, however that didn't fit in there due to the hose that's right here. So I had to remove the heat sinks, and it fits perfect now. So the next step here is to make sure that this flange here, this is from the old motor, is aligned in the new motor in the same way, because what's going to happen is, see if I could. You have to drop this part in the new motor. Drop it in so that it can align perfectly back when you screw this into the car. So what you do is you pack this with grease, make sure that it's in the same rotation as this one here. Oops, I'll find that now. And once it's in the same rotation, pack with a little grease. I think any synthetic grease will do. The grease that I have here is Redline CV2 grease, and that's what I'll use. I'll pack that in here, and I'll put the plastic part in this section, and then I'll mount it back in the car. So here we have the upgraded motor, F1 electric motor, and I cleaned it up with a bit of isopropyl alcohol, and I'm going to be adding these heat sinks. So I'll apply the thermal paste. Actually, I'll apply the thermal paste to the heat sinks and then onto the motor, and I'll show that application. One thing you'll notice is that some of these fins have been machined off. See that? And that's actually due to the fact that the F1 return hose was in the way. So, and I'll show that to you guys here. Well, let me get a flashlight. So this hose here was in the way, so I had to machine off some of the fins on the heat sinks. So that was actually Judy who machined that off for me and sent them back. So awesome guy. Anyway, so now on to apply the thermal paste. Now, so apply thermal paste. What I like doing is putting a thin strip across on each side, one on this side and one on this end. I'm pretty much using a card like this one, a vault carded card or whatever plastic card you have, and spreading the paste, having a thin layer. I guess similar to the way you would do it on a PC motherboard, on a CPU. So the end result should be a thin layer. I'll clean this one up a bit. You get the idea. So that's what I'm gonna do next. So the heat sink is on along with the thermal paste. Now I'm just gonna clean the outside of the fins a bit and add some grease in here. I got some red line grease, so I had that lying around, so I'm gonna use some. Put some in here. So yeah, then throw the motor back in. So we'll begin by attaching the top torque screw up here. So that's the next step. So I'm trying to fit the pump in, and even though the bottom has been machined off to make room for the F1 return hose, this fin here is going to have to be dremeled off a bit, machine it off, maybe the top one as well, because the pump support frame is getting in the way, and I'll show you where. This metal back here, you can see it a little discolored here where the fin is sitting. So maybe there, you see that? That's the trouble area, so I'm gonna have to machine off or Dremel off some of the front fins here, and then we'll be good to go. So I'll put some masking tape up front to cover that, and then I'll go ahead and machine that off. Okay, so I have the pump in. I filed down part of one of the fins here on this side. You could see it. Let's see if I could focus that. You see that one's filed. That one there's filed down a bit. But anyway, so what I did is once that was filed down, I placed the pump right behind the mounting bracket, and I tightened this bolt just a bit, the top one. Then afterwards I tightened the other to this one and one over here. Not completely, because they still have to be torqued. And then we go back to the Torx bolts. This one here, and diagonal to that, there's another one. Don't ever mess with the hex ones, because that will dehermetize the pump. So now I'm gonna go back and tighten the mounting screws. The mounting ones are hex, but on the pump you should only tighten the Torx bolt. So this one and another Torx screw here on the side. And as far as torque is concerned, I'll get those values for you guys. Next step, I'm going to replace the F1 relay with a 70 amp one, and also install a 50 amp fuse. So we do that by well, moving the seat forward, obviously, and removing these screws here. I'm not sure what size they are, so there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them. So be back in a bit. So in order to change the fuse in the relay, you need to disconnect your battery or turn off your master power switch. My car doesn't have one, believe it or not, so I need to disconnect my battery, and I'm sure you guys know how to do that. Now to change the relay, which I already did on my F430 coupe, it's this one here. You pretty much just pull it straight out right after you disconnect the battery. And the fuse, I had a 30 amp fuse here, and I changed it. I changed it to a 50 amp fuse. So it'll be in here. You pull this tab up. I'm trying to do it with one hand. There we go. So I took it out. So basically what you do is you pull on the tabs. There's one here, you pull up, and then on the bottom, you pull down at the same time and you pull this off. And that's what I did. This was a 30 amp fuse. Now it's a 50 amp fuse. I bought some off Amazon, but if you have your F430 toolkit, there should be a 50 amp fuse in there for you, so you can use that. Once that's all finished, you just push that back in, put your 70 amp relay in, push it in, and you're pretty much good to go. Put the carpet back, tighten it up, and give your car a test drive. So I hope you guys find this helpful. If you have any questions, feel free to post a comment and I'll reply back as soon as possible.